And we're live. First off, just want to do a quick introduction to a podcast that's been around, but we are going to be revamping it as part of the PFA. We're going to be covering all aspects around football in this country and what the PFA impacts. Obviously, it's such an amazing organisation for footballers in this country and obviously Australian footballs more broadly around the world. So we're going to be covering all content across the A-League, the Socceroos, the W-League and the Matildas, and of course the past legends of the game, which is going to just be so awesome to share. And also some of the most profound football stories that all the listeners and people tuning in will want to hear. So with that, the timing of this episode, we're coming up to the new A-League men's season. It's been a big sort of build up to the year, and we thought we'd go big with a bang and get the captain of Melbourne City, the reigning champion, Scott Jamieson, mate. Pleasure to have you on. How are you going?
I'm good, my man. I'm good. We're just, we're a few days out from the start of the new season. So it's been a long one, but more so longer this year because of COVID and no games and stuff, to be honest with you. So happy to be here and, looking forward to hopefully another successful season.
Mate, definitely. One thing I actually, and it's funny because through the week I heard you commentating on the FFA Cup game. I've seen you doing some insider sort of media reporting on the Socceroos. I mean, is this like a bit of a field we're going to see you in down the track?
I don't know. I don't really know, to be honest with you. I enjoy the media side of things. I've always enjoyed, spreading a message, being given the opportunity to talk, whether it's on radio or TV. And throughout the years, I've had opportunities and taken them. But then, I've seen kind of the way where the land sits with Australian football and the opportunities that may come with, football and media and football. And there hasn't been a lot. So it was nothing I really pursued. It was just, as I said, opportunities have come through contacts and people wanting to get me on board. And the other night with Michael Zapponi and Paramount and Channel 10, it came about. And had it been an A-League game, I probably wouldn't have done it. I don't necessarily feel comfortable probably talking about, opposition players and teams while in direct competition. But, it was an FFA Cup game and it was an experience. I wanted to try it and I was fortunate enough for it. So I won't say I won't do media in the future. But I mean, commentating and stuff like that is fun to try, but you never say never. I don't want to rule anything out at the moment, but it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable.
Mate, you sounded actually really good. Like you sounded like very comfortable, but I was curious because I'm like, one thing is like listening to commentators, then actually commentating. And I'm like, is it actually as hard as, that shift? Is it a big jump from like just listening to the commentators to actually focusing on each moment, assessing it, analysing it, kind of talking about what's happening?
Well, I'm a pretty opinionated person.
That you are.
Which to people. So when it comes to, viewing football and listening to commentators, whether it be in the EPL or international football or here in the A-League, privately, I'll be assessing them and critical of them to close people. And then on the contrary to that, I ask straight away, half-time and full-time to the close people around me, was I useless or was I not? And, I got some good feedback, but I tend not to try and be something I'm not when it comes to trying things. And when it came to the commentating, the co-commentating thing, I watch a lot of football. I've watched, it over the years and I grew up on, Richard Keys and Martin Gray. So, it was always on a Premier League games when them two were on it. So I've always had an understanding of watching and listening to commentators, but being on the other side and then doing it yourself, you do doubt yourself a bit. But I just try to be me, to be honest with you. I try not to complicate it. I didn't want to sound like a wannabe or anything like that. I wanted to put my kind of own spin on it. And it was my first go. So I knew I wasn't going to be perfect, but hopefully I gave a good account of myself. And to be fair, the boys at training and the people at training complimented me and took the piss, which is normal. So it was good. Yeah, it was good.
Oh, good, mate. Well, watch this space because we might see more of you there. Definitely. You mentioned, and obviously, I've obviously been a part of these myself, but it would be good just to get your perspective because you touched on it, like the long pre-seasons of the A-Leagues, and particularly on the back of COVID. Naturally, they're always a bit longer than the European seasons and so forth. Can you give a bit of insight maybe into, for the listeners out there, what it's actually like, those long pre-seasons, what goes on? And obviously for you coming into round one this week, there must be a bit of a sense of relief around actually being able to play for points now.
Yeah, I think, all A-League seasons have always been, I think, on average, 12 to 14 to 16 weeks every year. And early on in the A-League, there was, pre-season tournaments. Lately, prior to COVID, there was FFA Cup to break things up. But this year, there's been nothing. And that's just been down to COVID and, trying to come out of these lockdowns. So, this year, we only had 3 friendlies, and that was all against the same team in Western United. So that in itself was unusual. People who don't know this league very well will say, well, 15 weeks is an unusual preseason, but for people who have been a part of it, we're used to it. So you come in the first day, day one, and you're ramped and you're raring to go, and you're trying to impress the staff by the fitness test you do. Come by 2-3 weeks, you do the hard running and you're over it, and then you start hitting games. Whereas this year there was just nothing, to get you going in that sense. So the stimulation of it was tougher than it's ever been because of you did the running and then you go into games, but this year you couldn't. So you had to try and keep on, I guess, refreshing yourself. And we played intra-club games, but in a football team, there's only one style both teams know. So you're kind of mirroring each other. So the games are pretty much a write-off apart from, getting some minutes in the legs. But even that, it's still not essentially a game. So, we got given time off this preseason. I think we had 2 to 3 breaks. And that was for me important because just to refresh. I was a bit worried because of, you do the hard work and then you have 3-4 days off. Are you worried that you're going to lose some conditioning? But I think, our football club, and rightly so, has been complimented on, the way we've conditioned the players and the staff have done that. So, I put full trust in what they saw was a good program and so did the players. And, we've come out of it pretty fit, albeit the match fitness isn't there. But in saying that, you could probably play about 8 NPL teams, and by the 3rd or 4th, you aren't probably getting that intensity that you probably used to. So in essence, we've probably missed out on 3 or so other A-League games that we would have liked in pre-season. But, we've had the FFA Cup, and then now we've got round 1. So in terms of fitness, natural fitness, we're there. Probably 1 to 2 maybe games short of proper match fitness, but we have to adapt to it. We've adapted to other things lately in terms of COVID, so we have to adapt to it.
Definitely. The team did look sharp though the other night against South Melbourne in the FA Cup, so definitely going to be excited for round 1 for the City boys. And obviously you're quite experienced in the A-League and have been around a while, which we're going to go into, which it's funny to say because it feels like yesterday you were one of the young guys in the dressing room, but now you're kind of like the senior leader. But usually with most A-League clubs and towards the end of each season, there's always a bit of a high volume of turnover of players and so forth. Melbourne City seems to be quite calm and set in their sort of place. But I think one of the most notable things that's changed for the club from last year to this year has been the change in facilities, the change in scenery, the new training ground. Are you able to give us a bit of insight in what that transition's been like, what the training ground's like, how it's been for all the boys?
Yeah, so, we obviously have been at Bundoora for the past, I think it was 4 to 5 years, and they're amazing facilities. If you'd been there, you could definitely tell it's a professional football organisation, and for some, rivaling AFL facilities. And having been to 1 or 2 in my time, they certainly did. Also, being in Europe, these facilities in Bundoora were just as good. So to have that, I thought was impressive, but also at the same time, I thought it was a kind of minimum of what we should have in the A-League in regards to how far down the track we are now in terms of the A-League. I know Western Sydney have invested, Central Coast do have a training facility, but for me, it's about the norm now for A-League teams having their own training facility. We're that far down the track in terms of where we started and where we are now. So for me, in not sounding in an ungrateful person, but it was great to have, but it was also something that I thought we should have had because of the competition and the way it's been going. So we moved out, we become tenants in the southeast of Melbourne, and that partnership come from obviously Team 11, not coming into the A-League, missing out. And then I guess the world's aligning and the facilities and the infrastructure and the space and the land being there, and conversations had between the City Football Group and the people of the Southeast. So it's worked out brilliantly. We've been down there now for 16 weeks, and the facilities there are a good base. In terms of the pitch, we have an elite pitch. We have 3 other AstroTurfs for the academy. There's 2 other AFL pitches and a rugby league pitch, which the women's team have used at some time. So that's where the base is at the moment. And then you bring in, I think the $1 million investment that's coming in the next stage, where there's being built now a new facility in regards to a new elite pitch. There'll be new office spaces built on top of what's already there. The investment I think is close to, and I don't want to quote this, but I think it's 20 to 30 million, and it's just going to take it to the next level. And for me, that's a positive step, and trying to raise the bar. I don't believe Western Sydney may not have, invested into an amazing facility had Melbourne City not put these in place, because the bar keeps getting set. And as you know, players want to come to work every day and work in the best facilities. So that's where we're at the moment. I think we're looking at a completion of this whole new state-of-the-art facility around May to June next year. Also in with that, there'll be I think a 5,000 to 10,000 seated stadium on site for our academy teams. Our ALeague teams can play out there. So the wheels are in motion to make it the best facility in the Southern Hemisphere, I believe, and make it a place of work that every player would be grateful to turn up every day, but also be motivated every day.
As much as it's like a nice to have, it genuinely does make a difference too, doesn't it? In some regards, like when you're bouncing around training pitches like we've probably done in the past, and having a stable base of like high quality, it's for some reason it just helps. I think in general,
it does. And some people come across and make it out as if we're being ungrateful, but this is the highest level of football in Australia. So therefore, I believe that the highest level of football in Australia should have top class facilities. That's only, my take on it, being that, with it being the best in Australia, you want the best facilities in place. And now I understand there's budgets, there's everything like that, but for a player to come in and have everything in place for them to perform every day, there really is no other excuse that you can have. Now, like you said, I've trained on pitches where it's been an AFL pitch, and I've found anything or everything on the pitch. I've been in change rooms. I've had, public patrons walk through while I'm showering. So these are the steps that I've actually been through at certain clubs. But, I don't think it's asking for too much when you are talking about the elite level of football in Australia, that, there are private facilities and there are facilities fit enough for what is the highest level of football in Australia.
Yeah, agreed. Now, before we jump into this season, I do want to just touch on last season, because it was an incredibly important season for Melbourne City. I know how hard you've worked through your career and your journey to taste silverware and lift up that trophy, and obviously being a captain of the club. But can you just give us some insight for you? Like, how important was that to be able to achieve that, and also for the club to be able to put that one up on the board?
Well, I think the club, first and foremost, the shit was getting put on every year in regards to the club not winning things, but having the most backing, having the best facilities, and essentially having nothing to show for it apart from an FFA Cup. So every year you kind of felt there was more pressure being put on the club to start turning things around. Now, last year we obviously were successful in winning the Premier's Plate and the Grand Final, but for me the regular season was a tale of two sides, really. I mean, we had a decent start in terms of winning our first game, and then we went on a game of 3 or so games of losing, and then it started feeling from the outside that people were counting it as the same old Melbourne City. And for the people inside the walls, we knew the plan that was placed, and we knew that we had confidence in each other, and we went on an amazing run. And then the game against Central Coast to win the Premier's Plate, I don't think I've ever played a game inside my head prior to playing the game, really? If that makes sense.
What was going
through it? Yeah, I'm a pretty experienced player. I've played in grand finals. I think I've lost, 4 ALeague grand finals, an Asian Champions League. But in regards to I guess, knowing what was on the line and just that amount of pressure, not so much on myself, but as a club being released, if we win against Central Coast that night, was immense. So, I had played the game probably 100 times through, and I've made my debut for the Socceroos and never had that kind of thought process prior to a game. So it was different. We obviously won the game, and then the relief and just the emotions after the game from everyone was amazing. But I remember sitting in the change room just being numb because of just the emotions of one, as I said, the team, the club, winning that first silverware in the A-League, but also myself being an opportunity to win my first silverware as a player. I was just numb. I was tired, emotionless, and I remember sitting there while everyone else was celebrating. So it was pretty surreal at that time, but one I remember like it was yesterday. And then we had to play the rest of the games. And then the A-League grand final, we obviously had, a few boys missing with the Socceroos, but, I've played in grand finals against Adelaide United with Western Sydney, and you tend to go into a game, not going into it being defeated, but you understand you're up against it. You go to Adelaide Oval, Adelaide United have home fans, so you're up against it. But for whatever reason, and I don't think it was necessarily home ground advantage, but we just had a confidence and a belief in our team that even though we were missing, our best striker, our defender and our best midfielder, we had a belief that anyone coming in was going to do the job. And Sydney were missing Buster. So they, I guess they had the in terms of players missing, that they were in like that side. But I just had belief. We went 1-0 down, albeit to a Costa goal, and then it just flipped from there. We replied straight away, and like I said, that belief was so important. And for me, I said I've lost about 4. I've never really had that belief going into a game, which is scary because if I go into another grand final, I don't have that belief, I'll be shitting myself.
Yeah. Well, there's actually a moment you speak of it with Central Coast, and it speaks about your desperation. You might remember this. It was literally like the last kick of the game. It was almost like a 50-50, 55-45 kind of tackle, and you're running to your fullback position, and you just got there, and the bloke came in and clobbered you. And it was just like, that was those little things. You could see how desperate you were just to get the win. And I thought that's when you sort of saw where your headspace, the club's headspace, was out of how much you guys want it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm generally saying this, not even trying to be funny, but I don't think I've played a worse game, in the last few years, that Central Coast game, because I was I was tired before the game had started. I was thinking about the game, Monday, Tuesday of that week, and that's just not healthy for a footballer because by the time you get to the game, you're just fatigued mentally. So I just remember saying in that game to myself that there's not much I can do with the ball here. You need to just try and carry out anything possible to try and get yourself over the line here. And it's something that gets brought up a bit, but it was one of my worst games. But it's funny that you remember things like that.
Yeah, I do. It's one of the things that for me, and this is why I think this year, obviously, there's naturally an expectation on the reigning premiers to go on and do well and so forth. And I want to lead into your mindset around that, especially as a captain. But talking about some of those key players you lost, like we mentioned, Jamie McLaren, Connor Metcalf, Curtis Good, all arguably were in like the PFA team of the year and obviously the best 11 from a lot of people's perspective across their performance. The fact that you guys were still able to win those last 2 games without them, like the depth of your squad, is that something that's a real sort of PowerPoint as well for you guys coming into the new season? Do you see that being a really important figure in your team, in your squad?
Well, I actually remember we knew that they were going away probably about 6 to 8 weeks before they actually got announced they were going away. And we're human. So, for us to say that we thought we'd win it without them, it would be absolute bullshit. For a minute, we thought that. We obviously questioned, we're losing, Johnny Warren, medalist, top goal scorer for the last 2 years. Take out his goals, that's a massive ask. Then you're taking out, our midfielder who was probably the best up and coming midfielder of the year. Our centre half, who is not just the best centre half going around, but he's a left-footed centre half. So you take that out of the team. So there was so many different pieces of that puzzle, and we obviously sat down and spoke about it, not just as a team but as individuals. Look, it's going to be how do we actually win this without those 3? And it was one conversation that pretty much was spoken about, and then it just rolled off, and we actually believed, working with inside the club, that we had the players. But the key wasn't asking the three players replacing those three to replace them as such for like. It was them being the best of themselves. And we had Collar come in for Macca. We had Nooney missing for 8. We had 4. 5 if you count Nooney and Andy Naboo didn't play in the final series. So we actually had 5 missing, but we just had a real belief, and as I said, we had a message to these players, and it was clear that we weren't asking them to be the next Jamie McLaren. We were asking them to be the best Stefan Kolakowski, and full credit to those lads. They have to take a lot of credit. The Collars, the Tilios, Roston and Nuno were fantastic, and Flo and Luna, who were playing in the middle of the park instead of Connor. They were fantastic, but especially the young boys like Collar. Collar hasn't had the easiest of pass. He wasn't in state teams as a youngster. He had ACLs. He was raw. He hadn't played a lot of football, during the season. So for him to come in and perform like he did, I think he surprised a lot of people. But he's got a personality that, if you know him really well, he believes in himself. And that was the key to him playing so well. And for us as a team, having those, as I said, those 3 go, but, those 3 come in was immense. So we were pleased. We were pleased with their output, but we weren't surprised in a way also.
I'm excited to see some of those names you mentioned for this season too, Kolakowski and Tilio. I mean, there's still the front 3 you guys have plus them. I mean, it's going to be a scary and formidable attack. One thing that interests me as well, and this is just, looking over the horizon of the championship as such, and particularly for you with your experience in a leadership position, when you're coming back into preseason, you've obviously bolstered the squad. You've got the majority of the boys still there. How do you kind of keep level-headed? How do you keep the team focused to improve, to keep driving for the same success, and I guess avoid the old term hangover season type?
I've been in preseason now 16 weeks, and I've been waiting for someone to ask me this question, right? And it took 16 weeks. I've had probably about 15 interviews in the space, and not one person's asked me, well, how do you back it up? And I thought, well, I don't understand why no one's asking that. But the answer's been so simple for me. And I've lost so many grand finals. And every time I've come back into a preseason, I've always had a hunger and a will and a want to do better. And that starts with, the first day back when you do the preseason 6-minute run. So coming back this season, it's funny because I've always thought, well, what would it be like winning an actual final and not losing one? But winning it was good for 2 weeks. I was on I was on the sauce for a few days. I've got a son now, so it's harder now. Had I been younger, it might have been different. But I enjoyed myself for about 3 days after it, and then literally was tired, rested. But then 2 weeks after that grand final, it was a case of, okay, well, I've got to start running again. And it wasn't I told myself to start running again. It was just the norm for me to start doing that. Regardless of winning, I always do that. I always give myself 10 days, 2 weeks off. So that was the first kind of key in my mind was I wasn't telling myself to run. It was just a case of this is the time I always do running. So that was the first kind of tick of box of, okay, well, you won something, but it doesn't change essentially. Then we got down to first day back and, we all, our squad's pretty competitive when it comes to testing, whether it's, skim folds, whether it's running 6-minute, but over the past few years, a standard of fitness coming back has always been great, but every year it's got better. So in my mind, I was thinking, well, how do we come back as a team? It'll give me an identification of where we're at mentally, after such a successful season. Our standard and our base of where we were at this year was a lot higher than last year. Wow. So that first day I knew straight away, okay, well, everyone seems to be on the same wavelength as me of it was amazing to win last year, but it's also done, and that's key because some people can get ahead of themselves and really bask in the glory of, being first-time ALeague champions with Melbourne City. But we came back and the standard of the first day back scores were higher than what it's been. So I hope that's answered your question in regards to, what was motivation like. And it was so key. And I said for myself, it didn't even change. It would have been mirrored. Had I lost the grand final, I would have done the exact same thing. So I know inside myself that nothing has changed. I still have the want and the urge, and I've improved on every score. I've improved on last year's 6-minute run. So I just mentally I've ticked off a few boxes that, I don't think anyone can question the hunger and the motivation of the team, albeit results will be the key indicator here. I understand that. But, up until now, our squad has been hungrier and more motivated to go again because of the success we tasted last year. So that's how I know we're in a good place. But I understand it's a result-based business. I understand if we lose 5 in a row, they're going to say, well, they're
That's the thing.
second year syndrome, and I understand that. But I have belief that the work we've done, the attitude that we present every day to training, we that won't happen. We'll be in a good place again this year, albeit if we continue to work hard.
Beautifully said. One of the things I think as well that's going to get overlooked, and you know these boys much closer than I do, but I obviously know Macca and Curtis quite well. I also think that those guys not being present in that grand final, there's going to be a chip on their shoulder knowing them. Even though they're as much a part of it as everyone, they're going to want to be there. They're going to want to be able to hold that trophy up. So I think there's like a bit of a blessing in disguise there for you guys, especially I'm sure Connor Metcalf's the same, that they're not going to settle for anything less than what you guys did last year.
Yeah, you touched on it there. I mean, 2 years ago, I missed the grand final against Sydney FC for the birth of my son. And I remember, putting on a front to the team saying, I'm with you there. I'm supporting you. And it was the case, but the reality of it, I wasn't there and I wasn't a part of it. Now, we didn't win it that year. Fast forward a year ahead and those boys were a part of it, albeit from afar, but they are competitive people and they understand the feeling that they would have had on that night. They haven't had it yet officially. So, those 3 boys, without a doubt, I know that the bees in their bonnet, that they want to, be officially there. And they played their part. You can't underestimate their influence, those 3 players. But on that night, they were in a hotel room. They were by themselves. They weren't even together.
I think there was a funny thing, not a statistic, but a funny saying of Jamie said, like when I think you played the semi-final, they were up the road in quarantine. Like they were literally not far away from the ground. I think it was against MacArthur or whoever.
It's the old saying, you're so close but so far. And
would have hurt.
And I would have understood their pain because I said I did it 2 years ago when sitting in my house in Melbourne and those boys were in Sydney at Bankwest and getting beat and I was helpless, and I'm sure they would have felt that way too. And like I said, we wouldn't have got to the final hadn't those 3 boys contributed. It's just I definitely have a feeling and a nous that these boys feel there's unfinished business, to what happened last year, and it's definitely in their minds that they want to be a part of it again and then hopefully again and again. So no, you touched on it there beautifully.
Yeah, I think one of the other things as well that I'm excited about, and I think Melbourne City fans in general are going to be pumped for this, but more broadly around the A-League is the return of Matthew Leckie. And I know you've played with Lex before across probably the Socceroos and definitely your time in Adelaide. I wanted to touch on the loss of Craig Noon because that from the outside seemed like a big loss, and particularly for someone like Jamie McLaren, the balls that Craig Noon was feeding, I think he had the most chances created last season. So for your number 9 who loves to bang him in, that's going to be a bit of a loss. But you guys just went and got Matt Leckie at like the age of 31. Yeah. I think he might even, I don't know if he's Socceroo vice captain or interim captain at times now at the moment. But how's it been having his presence around the club? And I mean, what are you expecting from him? I guess he's only 31, 30. He's still got so much to give.
Well, I think firstly, losing Nooney was massive. Not just as a footballer, but as a character inside a dressing room where you've played at the highest level. But you're such a down-to-earth guy. And anyone who was in the same team as Nooney, and I'm sure the MacArthur boys are experiencing it now, he's an unbelievable teammate. So as a captain, he was always a very good soundboard. As a personal friend, he's still a very good close friend who I speak to. But losing him was tough. It was... like I said, not just about the football side, his stats and stuff speak for itself, but as an influence in the change room, when you have someone who has played in the Premier League and scored against, Man City, doing the extras, doing the 1%ers, how can anyone else question whether they're doing it? So that influence was unbelievable. But it wasn't a messy exit at all. Nooney had the opportunity to go to MacArthur and was still waiting from Melbourne City and had a few years on offer from there. So, the club and him were left on good terms, but, it was a massive hole to fill. And a massive hole to fill was filled by, the Australian captain at the time.
Yeah.
The Australian captain at the time. I've played with Lex, I played with Lex at the start of his career. And then, he's not at the end of his career by any means. He's only 30, 31. So, but you're looking at probably the start and then towards the back end. And you're talking about Nooney being an influence in a dressing room where, you're seeing him do the one percenters. Well, we're fortunate enough we've brought in, the Australian vice captain or captain, and he's doing the one percenters. So ideally, it was important. It was an important signing, to replace Nooney because of the influence, like I said, he had in the dressing room. And then you do that by bringing in the Australian captain. You're doing a pretty good job. They're not the same players. Obviously, Nooney's a left footer and Lex is a right winger. Nooney's a creator by, I guess, technique and flair, and Lex has got that, but he's got pace and power. So you look at our front three, we've obviously got Macca, but then on the sides, we've got pace and power with Naboo, with Lex, we've got Tilio, pace, left foot, collar. So we've done well in recruitment, but we've also done well in regards to the hole was missing in our dressing room by bringing in someone like Lex. And he's grown so much since I first, met him and played with him. And you do that through experiences. But, the knowledge that he has now after playing and plying his trade in Germany for so long is second to none. So he's another good soundboard for me to bounce off with any questions or any queries I have. And, them being away at the moment is obviously difficult because we'd love them to have them with the FFA Cup and round one coming up. But the fact that we had three players, in the Socceroos last week, I know Andy returned, but we've had three Socceroos is a testament to our football club. So it's really good having him back. And I'm pretty certain that he's going to have a good season. You can go off paper, you can go off name, but you see day to day someone working hard. Usually, not guaranteed, but usually the one that works hard are the ones that get the results. And this guy works his ass off. So I'm confident we're going to have Matthew producing and playing his role. That's all we ask of him.
Mate, you banged in a few goals last year, left and right foot, I might say as well. Now you've got these three. I'm interested to but on the training ground, these three, and obviously you've mentioned Tilio and Kolakovsky, who we can't forget because no doubt they're going to play a role. But just what's that been like for you from the training ground perspective? Are you bombing on anymore? Are you just feeding them and watching the show, or how's this sort of chemistry been between the front three?
Well, that leads back into preseason because we've been playing intra-club games. So how it's worked is it's more so I've been up against those three. There's been defenders up against those attackers, and that's been the case. So the chemistry has come on in the last few weeks prior to them leaving. But up against them, I'd rather play with them than play against them, having done it for a fair few weeks in preseason. But I think you have to understand who's in front of you when you play in the fullback position, and there's no right for me to be bombing on when Matthew Leckie or Andrew Naboo's 1v1 against a defender.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not that dumb to be doing that and trying to take away what could be a massacre 1v1. So it coincides with timing, and as I've got older, I've not got less fit. I've got more fitter, but I've chosen times to get forward and inject myself, and that just comes with experience and the style of play. So I'll be shouting at them if I overlap and I don't get it. That's for sure. But I'll also be very understanding of their strengths, and not just them two, but also Kolakovsky, Tilio, that their strengths are pace and going 1v1. So it'll be a season of timing rather than, quality over quantity will be my mantra to the way I get forward.
Yeah, love that. One of the things I actually heard you speak recently about, and it's probably something I assume probably you'll look back on a bit more at the end of your career, but you joined the club in 2017. You've played at 5 A-League clubs before. Did you ever think when you joined Melbourne City, you'd be walking out of there as, I guess, leading the most appearances for the club and having that sort of, up there as part of your history as well and legacy at Melbourne City?
Well, no, I kind of figured all going well, this would be my last A-League club. I've had a few, but all those A-League clubs I've chose to leave. And I'm not saying I walked into those clubs thinking I was going to leave at a certain point, but for whatever reason, I've chose to leave. But coming back here, I knew the age. I knew what was, in terms of time left of my career, this would essentially be my last club, albeit performing well, working well with the club, people inside the club. So I had the ambition that this would be my last club. I'm on track to do that, but never really thought about appearance records
it's probably not something
anything
you think about as a player, though. Really,
no, it isn't. And I guess it's a bit embarrassing because you're talking about, I think I played 106 games for the club, and you look across the river, Melbourne Victory, I think Broxy's played 300 odd games. So
yeah, fair.
I do understand the magnitude of it, albeit they're not a certain amount of games compared to others. But no, it's an honour at the moment. I know Curtis is breathing down my neck with his appearances, but it wasn't something I thought about. Like I touched on, I thought it would be my last A-League club, and I had no ambitions of leaving the club to go overseas again. So that was out of my mind. So without knowing it, yeah, I probably would have racked up the appearances, but it was never on my mind, no.
Credit to you, mate. That's a big achievement nonetheless. And one thing I'm interested to get your view on, and I know you're not going to talk too much about opposition teams, but naturally there's always been quite a strong rivalry with you boys in the Sky Blue, Sydney FC, over the last 2 seasons being the 2 most dominant clubs. We've seen a lot happen in the last sort of, 6 to 8 weeks in regards to a lot of other teams bolstering squads, particularly Macarthur towards the end of last season were already bolstering and building their squad for the new season. Melbourne Victory as well have bolstered. Are you expecting, I guess, more competition from other clubs this year to be really pushing you guys to go all the way? How do you sort of see that shifting?
Well, I kind of go off. I view it by, looking at the table last year. The 2 teams that were near the bottom were Victory, or were at the bottom were Victory and Newcastle, and those 2 teams have strengthened massively, and that in itself is a pleasing thing for me because you look at it and you go off facts. The 2, least impressive teams have looked at it and want to fix things, and they want to invest and they want to get better. So that in itself raises the barrier. And that in itself for us, we always get asked, do you just do the same as last year? And if we did the same as last year, we wouldn't be successful. We have to keep improving because of the fact that the teams, at the bottom have improved immensely, and then the teams around us have too. You touched on Macarthur, Sydney have brought in, 1 or 2, and it's a case of that. We have to understand that, last year was great and the bar was set last year, but if we don't improve, we'll get overtaken. So, I know firsthand what Tony Popovic can do. I worked with him for a year and was one of the best years of football in regards to understanding the game and learning the game. So I know the demands he'll place on his players, and the size of that football club is a very big one. I'm not going to downplay it because I'm a rival. I understand fully that the support of their fans is a massive one, but also the history that they've got as a football club is a massive one. So I wasn't surprised that they invested heavily because they needed to. They know they needed to get back to the standard of what they were used to prior to the last few years. And like I said, it's pleasing to see Newcastle really invest. They've brought in Arthur Papas, but also invested heavily, and that's a key. And that's a pleasing thing for me, not just as a competitor, but as a fan.
Yeah.
You want to see the A-League be competitive.
Correct.
You don't want dead rubbers, come February time when there's just 2 months to go. This is a good sign that the teams are really having a crack, and we're no different. We're in the pot to try and win it, and that's the key. You've got to be in the mix, and every team seems to have done it at the moment.
Yeah. To be honest, on that point, I think the Melbourne Derby is going to be back in full flight this year. That's probably one of the games I'm so pumped for, which I think is round 5 or 6 from memory. One thing I do want to talk about, and on a lighthearted note, whenever I talk about Scott Jamieson with people, especially across the A-League, one common theme comes up, and it's that you love a chirp on the field. You're not afraid. Yeah. You're not afraid to share some chat, let people know where they stand, and particularly give them some stick. Now, I feel very similar to you in that way because my personality off the field is very different to when I'm on. For me, I used to chat a lot on the field, but there was an element of that would help me focus and bring myself into the game and keep me there, keep me centered if I wasn't playing well. Do you know what I mean? For you, is that similar? Is that just your personality coming out? What's sort of driven that competitive nature where, you'll get in your opponent's ears and let them know how they're going or vice versa?
I've never gone in with a preconceived, aim to talk to someone they call it sledging. I don't even sledge. I get into a competitive battle with someone, and you can be competitive through physicality, but you can also be competitive verbally. So when it comes to someone, verbally, coming at me, I see it as a challenge and a competition in a sense, a competitive battle. And, I'm full aware of I guess, the history that precedes me. But I think the clear thing that I think people need to understand is you look across every team I've played in, and I tend to think I'm probably one of those people that you want on your team rather than you don't.
100%.
And I think that's where I sit with it. You know, like I said, I don't go into games looking to have words with a certain player. It's just not me. I'm not good enough to be able to do that. But once I do cross the white line and I find there's a competitive battle, you know, everything is a high stake, you know, adrenaline pumping. You get immersed in it, and that's just me as a person on the field. I do like to chat off the field, but I'm not one to be able to be getting in stoushes off the field. I've never been in an altercation in my life, but I've been in about 1,000 on the field, pushing shoves and handbags, and that's just being, you know, immersed in something that is football. So, you know, I enjoy every element of competing, and like I said, it can be physical in regards to running against someone, jumping against someone, but it's also a verbal thing for me, and competing against someone and making sure that, you know, you try and have the upper hand. Sometimes it's been detrimental to myself. You know, I've been too involved in it. I remember getting sent off last year in second round against Adelaide United. It was a case of, you know, the first half I was trying to talk to the referee, and he kind of mugged me off and waved me off. It was Ali Reza, who I think is a great referee, but he shushed me off. You know, and as captain, I was trying to speak to him, and he shushed me off.
Oh no!
And that in my mind was just took over a natural competitive. Hold on here, I'm trying to talk to you, and you're not talking to me. So I was having a competitive battle with the referee. Let alone I had 11 players against me. And then the second half, it happened that we made a substitution. Our right winger came off, and it was the other side of the pitch where you come on. So I was waiting for our player to come on, and he started the game. And I've gone mental at him. I've just, from the first half being shushed off and then him not listening and allowing our player to get on and get in position, I went mental. And that's when I got a yellow card and got the dress down from him. And then 15 minutes later, I made a tackle and was sent off. And that's where I kind of understand, you know, the fight you need to fight isn't sometimes the right fight. And that's something I learned and I'll continue to learn. But when it comes against a right winger and he gets the better of me and he lets me know of it, then I'm going to go back at him and first of all, try and win the next battle. But when I do win the next battle, I'll let him know about it, and then I'll continue to let him know about it. So, as I said, I'm not good enough to go into a game thinking I can, you know, target someone and sledge. I don't like to be called a sledger because I believe sledgers do it to enhance their performance. I don't do it to enhance my performance. I just in a competitive battle where I'm trying to win for my football club, and as an individual, try and win my battle.
It's the ultimate compliment. Love to play with, hate to play against. I think that'll.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not trying to give myself any big ups, but
that's what it is.
I think that's something, that you know, has been spoken about, and you know, I tend to leave things on the field. I look around the A-League, and I've got a lot of friends in different teams that I've played in. So, you know, talking about enemies or anything like that, I don't really have any. So the chat that I do have on the field is never crossing the line, never personal. It's just competitive.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you've done a lot of work with the PFA across your career, and I know it's something you've been close to for a period of time. And currently, you're in a delegate role for the PFA as part of your role with Melbourne City. And I'm keen for my own sort of the audience itself and myself to just get an understanding, essentially, what sort of that role means, what it entails, what's sort of, you know, the operation around that for you as part of Melbourne City's front.
Yeah, so I've been in the league for, you know, since I was 19. I'm now 33. So I've been in it a while. And as I first started in the league, you know, the PFA meetings and everything like that was more of a chore than essentially, you essentially wanted to be in it because you had the older boys in the team that would give you the information needed, and essentially the decision-making of what needed to be made would be made by them. As I got older and started, you know, getting more into the competition and more of essentially a name, you know, decisions were starting to get made, and I was a part of those decisions. So it was also, I guess, learning as an experience. But as I got older, you know, you take pride in the competition, and you want the competition to be as competitive as you can and present itself as well as it can. And, you I've taken that personally. I'm not shy to say that, in meetings and, in conversations with people, whether it be in the PFA or not. I've always been an advocate of wanting the best standards for football clubs. Firstly, to showcase our game that is the best in the world, or one of the best in the world. But at times we've self-harmed ourselves, and it hasn't been the case. So, being involved with the PFA, it gives you an opportunity, to be a part of conversations that the organisation has with the leagues and the owners, and then you relay it to any players in your team. And like I touched on, as a young boy, it wasn't so much something I wanted to be a part of, but you learn, you grow, you care more, and then it's something that I've been proud to be a part of, and be a part of, in some form shaping the game in my way, and trying to implement any ideas that I think would be had. So I've enjoyed being a part of it, and conversations, whether it's been about the pay cuts, or the CBAs, albeit I'm a small voice, but I think I have an opinion and an understanding of the game that would benefit anyone that wants to know it.
How momentous was that of a moment, getting that collective bargaining agreement off the ground? And I know you had some sort of input in the background as well, of just how you had a view and a stance on things. What was sort of your involvement?
I was pretty much immersed in the whole pay dispute and everything like that, and then took a little bit of a step back and let Roston Griffiths and Tommy Glover take over, but still was involved in the meetings, and was still involved with a few things. But for us to have something locked in place for 5 years, and having gone through the last 2 years of COVID, to get the deal that we got was a great one. But at the same time, you do tend to think, have we sold ourselves short if the game goes gangbusters? But there's things in place to benefit off that. But the organisation's done well. There's no doubt about it. There's been change. It's been through tough times, and something for me that's key. And it's not so much about individuals as people, but it's about communication. And I can say that the PFA, in terms of communication, has been brilliant. Throughout my time in the league, and especially since I've been more involved. And that's how I think you get to decisions being made is through communication, and a big part of being successful is communication. So full credit to the PFA with the way they've communicated to players, and albeit they've had their hands tied at times, but they've listened to the players, and tried to get it across what they believe the players want to the owners in the league.
Beautifully put, mate. Beautifully put. I do want to jump off the field a little bit, because there's a couple of things that I think I've seen that have changed in your life, I guess, for the past sort of couple of years. But one thing I've always been interested in, because I've never been a father, and especially never been a father whilst playing football. But has having a baby sort of changed anything on the field, off the field for you? Has it given you a bit of a new lens of how to be a professional? Or is it still sort of the same routine for you?
No, I don't want to disappoint you here, because I know I've read a lot of interviews where people will say, it's shaped them. They have this newfound drive. They're not just feeding themselves; they're feeding their family. But it hasn't so much shaped me on the field or anything like that. I can honestly say that. I have a full understanding that my son and my partner, are looking to me to provide. But my drive and my want and will hasn't changed from prior to being a father to what it is now. I'd say it's more shaped me off the field, and more so just the responsibility of having, first and foremost, a human being that is a reflection of yourself is one humbling experience. I find myself just sitting there looking at him and really just thinking, wow, I've played my part in making a human being.
That's
and
crazy.
It's something that is a part of me. And I found myself just sitting there 4 or 5 minutes. And I mean, I'm a big kid in itself. I'm a very easygoing, young at heart kind of person. And I feel having a son now, and he's at 15 months, where he's starting to come into forming a personality, but starting to find, little, whether it be cars or anything like that. I find myself, reliving little things of my childhood, which is an amazing experience. And, just forming memories with him and my partner is something that I've never had any preconceived ideas that it would be like, but it's truly unbelievable that I get to form experiences with my son and help try and shape, the person he is for the future. So I wouldn't say it's changed anything on the field as such, but I mean, the fact that I have my son watching me at games and after games, getting an opportunity whether to bring him on the field is pretty special. But when I'm going ape shit at another opposition player, I ain't thinking about it.
Yeah, I can imagine your partner's putting the headphones on him there.
If anything, I get a little embarrassed that he may see one or two things when he's older. But no, I just say that the fact that being a father and as I said, playing my part in creating someone who is a part of you is an experience in itself, and one I'm very grateful for.
Mate, awesome. I wonder if you'll be looking in the mirror in 18 years or so, seeing him chirp at left back. I'm sure he's gonna have a left winger like you, but that'll be it'll be funny.
Yeah, I hope he does. Like, it's a case of now he's formed a person. He's starting to form a personality, and he's thrown a few tantrums. He started the tantrum phase, and I'm actually encouraging it because I want my son to be. Well, I don't want him. I believe the DNA will represent that he'll be a competitive person. His mother was a competitive athlete, so he will be competitive and he'll hate losing. So now when it comes to something getting taken away from him, he starts the waterworks, he starts everything. And I encourage it because I want him to be a passionate person, and gain that kind of, not wanting to lose or anything like that. So I encourage it, albeit I don't want it to blow out of control and he becomes a real sook and a bad loser as such. But I encourage him forming his personality and wanting to express himself.
Absolutely love that. And I guess one of the final questions to me, and I know you love your Adidas stuff. We can see you wearing Adidas there. You're a proud Adidas athlete. At times, I'm unsure though if you're sponsored by the golf department or a subsidiary of the golf department, because you do promote a lot of your golfing, your Adidas golf. Yeah. Where is that? Is golf a bit of your poison off the field? Like, where did that passion stem from? Because I've seen you swing, and it's not too bad. I must give you that.
No. So I am an actual Adidas golf ambassador.
That is unbelievable.
I've been with Adidas football essentially for close to 9-10 years. Wow. But the Adidas golf ambassador role came. It happened Christmas Eve. I got sent through the contract Christmas Eve 2 years ago, and it was the best Christmas present I've ever received. I've always played golf on and off. My father is a regular member in Sydney at Ride Golf Club. So it's always been around my family, but essentially I haven't played it regularly. And coming to Melbourne City, there was an amazing golf group already started. The physio, Darren, Bratty, Bratty's a massive golfer. There was about 5 or 6. So it kind of got my golf love back. I was in Sweden prior and played 1 or 2 rounds, but never regularly. So coming to City, it worked out, bang, playing golf every week, every day off. And then became friends with a gentleman named Ross Flanagan, who owns a Drum and Golf in the city. And he's a Scottish lad. My family's Scottish. So we hit it off, loves his football, loves Melbourne City. So become good friends with him and still am. But it coincided with playing one day and him asking, obviously about my deal with Adidas and why don't you get Adidas golf gear? And I was like, well, to be honest with you, I've never thought about it. I don't want to chew off more than I can bite, because as a footballer, we're not AFL or rugby league players. They get given everything. We're grateful for whatever we get, and that's it. But and then a week later, I got a call back from Adidas Football, and they just said, look, we're going to get you some golf gear. And I was like, okay, no issues. Spoke to Ross, and he said, I spoke to the Adidas golf guy and just said, listen, who you are, we'll send you some gear out. And I was like, oh, okay. Didn't think anything of it, was grateful. And about 2 months later, I got a phone call from the head of marketing at Adidas Golf, and they just said, look, we'd like you to be an Adidas ambassador. Wow. And Israel Darg, the ex All Black, there's a few others running around that aren't actual golfers, but we're ambassadors. And I mean, to be a part of a brand like that, I said I'm grateful now for just a pair of boots. As I've got older, I've understood that we are very fortunate in regards to endorsement deals and everything like that. And albeit we ain't on the Ronaldo levels where we're earning millions from it. So you give us a bit of boots and some gear, and I'm happy as that. So to be given the opportunity to wear Adidas golf gear, but also be given it in spades is something that I'm truly grateful for, not just with football, but for golf gear. So the partnership's been really good. I've met a lot of people through it. Just got a pair of Adidas golf shoes as we sing.
Oh, there he is. He's giving the plug like a true ambassador. That's what we love.
So they're just sitting there. So I've been very grateful and to the partnership, and it's gave me, I guess, more motivation because, for them to send me gear is one I'm very lucky for. And if I'm not playing golf, then I'm not really repaying any faith they have in me. So I try and get as much as I can. But it's been hard because of COVID. So we're going to get back into it now, and throw on top of having a kid, it's a little bit harder. But yeah, no, it's been one of the most, I guess, how do I put it? But one of the best surprises I've had in terms of football off the field, getting a golf ambassadorial contract, that's for sure.
It's a story to tell, mate. But no, look, Jamo, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the first edition of this revamped PFA podcast. Obviously, we piloted this one with you, and mate, I could talk all day to you. You've got so many good stories. I love how you go about your football, and super excited to see how City go this season. So best of luck for this Friday against the Roar, and I hope it all goes well, mate. I'm sure we'll catch up soon. Might have to have a round of golf.
You're a champion, mate, but also credit to you because I know you've done the Unlaced podcast, and I've seen it from afar. But credit to you for. I think it's important that we have people who have worked inside the league, telling stories and being a part of the media. So. I know I said I've watched the Unlaced podcast, but full credit to you and the PFA for bringing you on board on this because you know what it takes and you've been through it. So not pissing in your pocket because you're talking to me now. But,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm sure you'll tell me otherwise soon.
You do tell a good story. So full credit to you. And like I said, I'm glad that we have people inside our game that have lived the game rather than coming from the outside as such. So. Full credit to you, and I'm a fan of definitely your podcast, brother.
Appreciate it, bro. Thank you so much. And to all the listeners, this is the first episode. We'll be back on the next episode. But if you did enjoy this with Jamo, give us a like, give us a comment. Definitely subscribe to all the PFA channels, and we'll keep bringing out some more cool episodes with a range of players around the PFA over the next few weeks and months. Thanks, everyone.